to me going live. First of all, good evening, everyone. I am here truly. So I'm talking on Instagram as well as a lot of my platforms, social media-wise, Facebook group, personal Facebook, YouTube, Periscope / Twitter as well. So again, obviously, unless you just were fortunate enough to avoid all news altogether, especially COVID-related stuff, we heard of the FDA in the U.S. stopping or halting, right, the continued use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because of some data that's come out, right? So I wanted to obviously get on here because I saw very quickly memes were popping up, and the told you so's were like running rampant. And of course, I have a lot of friends and colleagues who have taken the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as well too. So, they are peppering me with questions. So I told you I was going to come on this evening really to kind of talk about, really two things, right? Like this, what is, the blood clots? What is this concern? Why did they stop it? Right? Is this something you should be worried about? So let's, obviously I won't start off assuming that you guys already know, right? So let's start from the beginning. This morning, right, now officially speaking, the FDA halted the continued use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine until they kind of looked at some more data. Reason why is that from what we know is that we have about, 6 women ages from about 18 to 40 in their 40s, or just like 6 in the 40s, right, who develop blood clots. Importantly, they develop this rare blood clotting disorder, the cerebral venous thrombosis, right, which we will talk about, because I think to kind of understand why they stopped it, understand why you should be concerned, you should actually understand what happened, right? Because it's easy to just say blood clots, right? Because we are aware of blood clots. We see all these commercials. Get on your Cerebrals, your Eliquises of the world for blood clots, right? But understanding that this was a very rare type of blood clot that that really forced them to kind of halt it, right? And what we always do here, right? We're here to acknowledge risk. We're here to acknowledge concern, right? And the reason being is that I want you to be aware of everything that's going on in health wise, right? Again, that's all about empowering yourself about health. So we want you to be aware of everything that's going on so you can be empowered and make informed decisions. So let's talk about this cerebral venous thrombosis. And someone told me I'm 18 to 48. Thank you. Cerebral venous thrombosis, what is it? Is this something you should be concerned about? And then we'll bring it back to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, right? So, of course, if you're watching me, of course, Instagram, if you're watching me, you can't, I won't be able to kind of share my screen, but we will be sharing screen as well, too. I'm actually going to be using we're going to be using Johns Hopkins Medicine, a really prestigious, medical school. So we're going to be using their website to kind of get some of our background information. So y'all don't just think I'm the one pulling it out of nowhere. So we are on the Johnson. Let me minimize my screen so y'all could just see that. So this again gives a nice, kind of overview of what cerebral venous sinus thrombosis is. And again, the reason why I want you to kind of understand this is because once you understand what this is, and then you kind of understand, what's happening with Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you're able to kind of put it in perspective, right? Because almost immediately I got calls like, oh, hey, you know what? Like I just got the vaccine. Is this something I should need to be worried about? So again, 6 people got it. So far as we speak, about 6.8, we can round it up. We'll say 7 million people in this country have received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And 6 out of those 7 million who are, and all women, develop this rare disorder. So, John Hopkins says, what is the cerebral venous thrombosis? Occurs when a blood clot forms in the brain's venous sinuses. And again, we'll have pictures here for Instagram. I actually download. I don't know if you can see that because my light. Yeah, you may be able to see that. So that is the venous system in the brain, right? And this, again, we have arteries, we have veins. That is the venous system, which actually brings deoxygenated blood back to the heart to send out to get some blood, right, to the lungs and everything else. So It talks about, this aspect of clotting in the brain and what goes on. And again, here, we're not here to go through the pathogenesis. Again, I think that's a little bit, too advanced level as far as, what actually occurs during this process. But we just need you to understand that, venous system, when it works well. When it doesn't, there has some issues that can occur. And I can tell you, especially me clinically, I have taken care of in my, again, I haven't been practicing long, but I've taken care of about 2 people with this diagnosis, right? Because it is not a common diagnosis. So, and then John Hopkins even talked about, hey, it is a rare form of stroke. It affects about 5 people in 1 million each year, right? So I just want us to think about that number while we think about the number for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So just this disease process alone affects 5 people for every 1 million people every year. Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been given out to, we're just rounding up the number, 7 million people, and 6 people got it. So if we were just going with the math, here, if it affects for 5 for every million, if I, again, multiply it by 7, right, that should be about 35 people without the onus of a Johnson & Johnson vaccine will pick up this diagnosis, right? So again, just so we can kind of get the idea of whether we should really be like crazy concerned with this vaccine in and of itself. And I will know, especially when we've talked about AstraZeneca in the past live, that we're seeing some blood clotting concerns as well too. And this is what, especially us, when we were harping on the Moderna, Pfizer, we were listening to those, debates and discussions. We said, like, hey, there's pros and cons to each different type of vaccine that you're going to get, right? And what we're starting to see possibly is that there may be some relation, right? Not necessarily causation, but there may be some relation to the types of vaccine, which is the adenovirus type vaccines, to blood clotting. Again, we're not there yet, right? But again, let's focus on the cerebral venous thrombosis. Again, 5 people every 1 million per year. It usually affects kids, but when it does affect adults, we're going to talk about some of the risk factors that occur when it does affect adults. So again, these are just some of the risk factors, and just the kids, if they have some type of blood clotting disorder, right? If they suffer from sickle cell anemia, some thalassemia related issues as well, iron deficiency, certain infections can also be associated with this, and even head injury. Now, when we think about adults, right? And again, like I said, we want to, again, make sure we have a clear picture of this disease process, because again, it isn't just blood clots, right? It is this cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, right? Like, it's a very specific one, which kind of raised the alarm, which told the USA and FDA, like, hold on, let's take a look at this. Pregnant, obviously women, right? So again, let me just hyphen, like, if you're a woman, you are at a higher risk for getting just this disorder. Again, we're not talking about the vaccine. We're talking about the disorder just alone. If you have issues with blood clotting related concerns, what we call these thrombophilias, right? These are blood clotting related issues. Antiphospholipid, protein C, protein S, antithrombin 3, lupus, these are the lupus anticoagulant, factor 5, right? So if you have some genetic related issues, you may be at a higher risk for this. If you have cancer, right? If you have issues like lupus, Behçet syndrome, Wegener's, again, these are all autoimmune related disorders, again, that can affect the vascular system, which can increase your risk for this very rare disease. Remember, 5 out of every 1 million. If you're obese, if you have, issues with low blood pressure in the brain, sometimes due to injury that can occur, and then some inflammatory processes, right? So if we kind of get an overall window of what's happening, right? Let me stop it for a second. If we get an overall window of what's happening as far as the risk factors is concerned, we're seeing that being a woman puts you at a higher risk. We're seeing that, if you have any hormone related issues, higher risk, genetic related issues, autoimmune related issues, higher risk. Again, we're just talking about the adults, right? And again, and even if you have all of those things there, right? Even if you have all of those things there, your risk is 5 for every 1 million. Right here in the Johnson & Johnson, right, vaccine, again, 6 for about 7 million, which if we just wheeled it back, which is about 1 every 1 million. So the risk of getting this disorder, again, if we're determining that there's some association, again, we're not saying this here It's kind of early. In fact, it's way too early to even kind of put two and two together. But if we're saying this here, if we have that every 1 million people will get it due to the vaccine, right? If we assume that like those connect, we're not saying that here, right? We're gonna let the studies, we're gonna let the people who do this research kind of play it out and kind of tell us. But again, I just want you to understand. If you have none of those, if you've never taken that vaccine, right, the risk of getting this issue is 5 for every million, right? If you've taken this vaccine, from what we're seeing, it's 1 for every million, right? So if you think about it, it's almost like a protective factor, right? Not saying that it's protective. I don't want y'all running and saying, well, Dr. Pierre said if I get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, I am now protected against this very rare disease. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying we just have to kind of put, we just have to make the numbers make sense for us when we're thinking, right? So let's go back to our John Hopkins one just to make sure we get our risk factors, right? Because again, now that we know the risk factors, obviously you want to know, hey, Dr. Pierre, like when do I need to go to the ER? That's what people want to know. When do I need to go to the ER, right? When do I need to go to the ER and see someone because I may have this? I don't want everyone who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to all of a sudden think they need to run to the ER. That is not the case whatsoever. If you have some symptoms and concerns, right? If you have symptoms and concerns, yeah, you may want to obviously call your doctor, because again, remember here with the academic hospice, the lives with Dr. Berry, even though I'm a physician, well-trained, well-educated, y'all shouldn't listen to anything I say. Please trust your own personal doctor, because I can't give you medical advice, right? So let's talk about some of the symptoms associated with this, again, very rare disease, the cerebral venous thrombosis: headaches, blurred vision, fainting, seizures, coma, loss of control over body movements, right? And I remember when I was taking care of my patient, this was in residency. I was taking care of a patient during residency. It was a young girl, right? Again, woman, kind of check. Young girl who came in with really, really splitting headaches, right? And some blurry double vision, right? Like that was her issue, right? And if we remember that picture of what the venous system looks like, right? If we remember that picture, it's not necessarily surprising that you could possibly have, vision issues, right? Just because of the way the organs that the venous system supplies, right? So this girl came in, she had a splitting headache, she had really bad vision issues, and we were just very concerned. She ended up having a seizure. I mean, all of these kind of hallmark check marks that made us say, like, we need to be thinking about this aspect here, right? Because someone may have given her, some migraine medication, some pain medication, told her to go to sleep and leave, you're okay, right? But you could have missed a very deadly disease, right? So it is something, even though again it's rare. Remember, 5 every million, 2 to 5, again, really 2 to 5 every million, right? But it's rare, right? So even though it's rare, it is something we should have in the back of our mind if the picture doesn't really make sense in that regard, right? So we got our symptoms here. How do we typically diagnose it? Of course, a good especially to my docs who are watching, making sure you get a good history, making sure you're asking the right questions, right? And then there's scans, MRIs, CAT scans, benography. Again, nothing that you necessarily need to be focused on right now. Just understanding that there is some steps, right, to get to that point, right? There is some steps before we start saying every single person we know like has this very rare disease. Again, the rare disease, 2 to 5 per million disease, right? Like it just is what it is, right? So when we get to this point, right, when we say like, yeah, doc, I got the vaccine, right? Like, should I be concerned? Should I be worried? What we're seeing is that these symptoms kind of started, roughly about a week to 3 weeks after they got the vaccine. Week to 3 weeks. Most people, especially if you've gotten the vaccine or you get any vaccines, typically when you're having some type of symptomatology, usually that first 24 to 40 hours is usually the roughest, right? And then you just kind of go about your day, right? So we're seeing this a little bit further out. 1 week, 3 weeks is when this is happening. And like I said, we're going to be looking at the data to kind of see if there's even a relation to the 6 out of 6.8 million. We're still looking to see if that's actually an issue as well too, right? So definitely something we want to think about. Once we get data to kind of see if there's anything we could piece together that says, you know what, like look at all of these issues here that would kind of tie together, and then that could give us a risk. And again, as a physician, right? And again, this is where I've told a couple of people today, as a physician, something like this, reason why this is good for us to know, right, is because now if I have that woman, right, especially if it's say nobody but women get this, right? But if I have a woman who gets this and they meet some of these characteristics, like now I have to like be on, alert, right? Because again, just getting this disease, right, this cerebral venous is not a death sentence, right? It's if you miss it, right, is when it can become a death sentence. But just getting the disease doesn't automatically mean like, all right, no, like I'm done, I'm out of here. No, that's not the case. That's why it's very important. If you have symptoms, again, we talked about it, headache, blurred vision, some dizziness. And I'm not talking about just a regular headache, because a lot of people get headaches, like a very like splitting headache, like much worse than you've ever experienced, right? That should be something that should prompt you to call your doctor or go to the urgent care or emergency room and say like, hey, I think something is wrong, right? Because we already know what's going to happen. I can tell you what's going to happen. We're going to get a flood of people rushing to the ER now, concerned that they have this, right? So it's up to, to physicians like myself alike and healthcare workers alike, to educate, right, our community, to let them know like, hey, these are the check boxes that we want you to think about, so you're aware. And so you can be much more proactive to see like, all right, is this just like a regular, little tension headache? Someone's bothering me at work. Like, that's why I got the headache. Or is this something I really need to be concerned about? So definitely something, again, I want you guys to understand that, yes, there's severity, there's concern from the healthcare field, especially those, like myself, who've been telling y'all to get the vaccine. And guess what I'm going to do after all this is said and done? I'm going to tell y'all still get the vaccine, right? We're not here to tell y'all don't need a vaccine, because so far, this isn't a scary, endeavor, right? Again, for example, right? Again, let's just so you can understand what the number 6 out of 6.8 million is 0.000088, right? That is 1, 2, 3, 4. That is 6 zeros before you get to a number. And again, this is a rare occurrence, right? In this data, right? Now, again, we're going to wait for more data to come out. We're going to see if that number shoots up through the roof. But guess what? You have a higher risk of getting blood clots if you get COVID, right? Like if you want to have a good chance of getting a blood clot, get COVID-19 and your risk increases, right? You have a better risk of, getting these types of blood clots, right, when you're actually pregnant, right? And again, no vaccine, right? You have a better risk when you're on birth control, right? I saw a great meme, that one of my followers on Instagram, I think Dr. Fuji posted, right, where he had like separate graphs that kind of noted like, all right, these are your risks for like if you don't have any issues, these are your risks if you happen to be pregnant, happen to have birth control. Like there are much greater things that will cause you to have a greater risk than 0.000088, right? That is the chance that if you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you may get this rare event that could be life-threatening if you don't act upon it. Again, this is not a official death sentence the second you get it, right? And that's where I want to stress, right? Like, just because you get this does not automatically mean like, oh, like I'm out of here, right? Like I'm done for it. No, that is not the case, right? All it says is that like if these symptoms occur, you need to go to the ER like ASAP, like run to the ER. But understand what the symptoms are, right? Because again, a lot of people I see are posting. What's going on, bro? I see a lot of people are posting just kind of blood clots. They're kind of throwing out the word blood clots and not understanding that, like, yeah, there's blood clots and then there's this disease, right? Which is much different than just regular blood clots. So does the Johnson and that's why again and I understand, right? We have to educate ourselves, right? We have to educate the community so they understand that, like, instead of them saying like, oh, hey, the Johnson vaccine causes blood clots. Well, no, it causes this like very rare, right, disease that's due to a blood clot in the venous system in our brain. In our veins in our brain, it causes a clot there, right? Like that is much more specific. And that, again, if you don't have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, 2 to 5 per 1 million. With this, we're looking like 1 per 1 million, right? Like that's what the numbers are showing, right? If we were to continue out in this trend, again, 0.00000088, right? That's just what the numbers are in that regard. So understanding that, yes, as in the healthcare field, we are worried, we are concerned, we understand why you're worried, why you're concerned, and especially when you think about what's happening with AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca is not even here in the U.S., right? We're not even letting folks get the AstraZeneca over here, right? Because of the concern for clots, right? So you best believe, because I was in a clubhouse earlier today, and someone asked, like, well, if it's only again this 0.000088, right? Like if it's only that many people, why stop it at all, right? And I think what I love is the fact is like, no, we are just being very careful here in this country, right? Like, again, I talked about this before, especially when we were talking about the Moderna and Pfizer, right? And people were like mentioning like, oh well, Tuskegee, right? Like that was like their big, like I think that was one of the ones they always mention, right? Tuskegee, right? And we were telling y'all like, no, like stuff like Tuskegee ain't happening, right? Because of times like this. Because if we get wind of 6 out of 6.8 million, having this very rare disorder, hey, we want some answers before y'all keep going, right? Like this again like highlights the reason why we were telling y'all like. This is especially those who were hesitant because they were concerned that the government was going to just give them this vaccine and not care about the results. Like no, like there's a lot of people on this side who watch these numbers like intently to make sure that something like this does not become a problem. Do I think this will be an issue? No, right? I think they're going to review numbers. They're not going to necessarily be able to pull like a causation out, right? And they're going to say, you know what? Go ahead and run it, right? Like I think that's like by next week we'll be talking about how Johnson & Johnson is back. I think, don't know, right? We'll see when the numbers tell us, right? But like I think that's the issue of concern there. So let me answer this one question. So someone asked, do I have to wait another week and a half before I know I'm in the clear? Very good question, right? Yeah, like I said, I think if after a few weeks, or at least from what we're seeing with just the 6, right? Like after a few weeks, if you're not having any symptoms, right, that I kind of mentioned, right, blurry vision, right, severe headaches, right, fatigue, muscle weakness, like if you're not having those issues, right, I think you don't necessarily have to worry about having this very rare disorder, right? Like, but now that right, that it's a possibility, right? Again, we're just be on the lookout, right? Be on the lookout and say, hey, like I see what's happening with Johnson & Johnson. I got the vaccine a few weeks ago. I got some headaches. It's not severe. I just want to let y'all know just in case we got to go this route, right? And they're also having some thrombocytopenia, which essentially is a low blood count related issue as well, associated with this rare blood disorder, which is interesting enough because what you tend to see a lot is when patients have elevated platelet counts. Again, platelet counts are like if I cut myself, those are the things that help stop me from bleeding, which is why when you take aspirin or Plavix, you may bleed more, right? Because the aspirin and Plavix actually causes platelets not to work like correctly, right? Just so you have an idea what platelets are and everything else. So we saw some low platelet count associated with these strokes, right? Again, not sure. We're not saying causation. Really, we're just saying like, hey, this has seemed to happen in this group that we're watching, right? And again, I think that's what's most important, that we're watching. Right. And we're gonna be, we're gonna continue being on point, right, as far as the monitoring of any symptoms. Right. Again, I got the Moderna vaccine, and I remember listening to the concerns for people with the Moderna vaccine, as far as like, oh, this came out too fast, or mRNA is new and all that. So I remember listening to those issues, and we have the adenovirus vaccines, right? This is the Johnson Johnson, AstraZeneca, right? We know there's going to be some issues associated with that as well. But we just want you guys to be diligent. We want you guys to understand that one, and again, if we get for a number's sake, right? For those who may not know, let me just. I typically keep the vaccine tracker just to give you an idea, right? So, here in the United States, we have given out 192 million, right, vaccines. Johnson & Johnson is associated with 7 million of those, right? So again, they don't make up a huge endeavor of the huge portion of the vaccines we're giving out. It's still, Moderna and Pfizer is still kind of running the show a little bit. So even though, yes, they may stop this, temporarily, which I fully expect it to be temporarily, you can still get your vaccine, especially if you're worried, right? Now, again, if you weren't going to get your vaccines, this news shouldn't drive you one way or the other, right? You shouldn't necessarily get excited over this news because if you weren't getting it when it was mRNA vaccines, you likely weren't going to get it when there were adenovirus vaccines as well. So I understand that this may be your gotcha, I knew it moment, but it really isn't because you weren't going to be changed anyway, right? So again, remember I told you guys, I'm not here, right, to force the needle in your arms, right? Yeah, we're not saying, especially me, I'll just speak for me. I won't speak for the healthcare field, right? I'm not saying that you should. I'm not begging you to get it. No, I'm just here to educate you on all the reasons why you should, so you can make your own informed decision, moving forward. That's what we're here for, right? We're here to help you guys, make the informed decision moving forward, regardless, right? Again, right now, obviously, COVID is the flavor of the year, right? But if we were talking about the flu, I'd be just as convicted in talking about the flu vaccine. If we were talking about diabetes medication, I'd be just as hyped as talking about diabetes medication. It's all about educating yourselves and helping you find the right information. Like I said, I'm always big on, very easy medical websites that are easy to read, or just, follow people like myself and others who, spend time, whether we're on Twitter, whether we're on Facebook, whether we're on YouTube, whether we're on Clubhouse, wherever we may be, we want to educate. We'll do, because we like doing this. We'll do this all day, right? Because if I can make one more person, right, get that vaccine who didn't necessarily want to get the vaccine until they heard me, then my job is done, right? It just is what it is, right? So again, we're not going to long talk you guys, for much. Again, if you have any questions, remember I've said this before, any questions, any concerns, anything that I may not have touched upon, with my lives or anything else, feel free, hit me in comments, hit me in the DMs, and any question you may have, because like I said, I'm here to answer. That's what it is. So you guys be blessed. Have a great night. I just knew I had to come talk to y'all tonight, because the second I saw that news, because this is so crazy, right? Before I let you go, this is so crazy. So the news first hit, I got an email from AMA, right? And then I got an email from Market Watch, which is a stock related issue. Then I started seeing text everywhere. Started getting some text messages. Then I go to social media, and then it's already on social media. I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a long day. And then of course I'm on Clubhouse, so I go to Clubhouse. There's 4 different rooms, all day talking about it as well too. So we knew this was going to be important topic, because again, like I said, the Johnson & Johnson is here. It's going to save a lot of lives, right? It's going to save a lot of lives. I think out of the 6, somebody asked me, out of the 6, I think we had 1 fatality. So out of the 6, we had 1 fatality due to the cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, which people think may be associated with the vaccine, but we're not even sure yet. It just is what it is, right? So y'all be blessed. Y'all have a great evening, right? Be educated. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Ask questions. Me and healthcare professionals alike are here to help. We want to help. We want to get y'all right. right? We want to make sure you're making the best educated decisions upon yourself, all right, to save lives, right? Because trust me, these vaccines are saving lives left and right. Trust me, if you want a better chance of getting blood clots, just get COVID-19, right? If you want a better chance of seeing doctors like me in the hospital, get COVID-19, right? That just is what it is, right? And remember, especially for my young invincible folks, which tend to occur, right? Like, yeah, you may get COVID-19 to be able to live, right? But your mom may not be able to, right? Your dad may not be able to. Your grandma's maybe, grandpa, like your relatives, right? Your kids, like this is not a benign disease. We are not out of the woods yet, especially with these variants, around, right? And well, that's a whole nother discussion about these variants, but it's like it just is what it is. So yeah, be blessed. Like I said, I'm talking too long. I'm gonna see you guys. Friday. We did not do. I know I didn't do a Friday Night Live, which I usually do Friday Night Live. But so we'll touch base on some more, because we should have more information by Friday as well too. So we'll touch base on Friday. Y'all be blessed. Bye.